Hi, this is Leonora Tegatil with Too Punk to Be a Hippie, and I am here with a dear friend of mine.
Very dear.
Very dear.
We are dear.
Very precious. Nickey Mullen. Hello.
Hi, it's great to be here, and hi to everybody there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this is the first time I'm recording in my house with somebody, so this is pretty cool. Thanks for visiting.
It's my pleasure, all the way from Boston.
I know.
Yeah.
So I want to fill you in first on how I got to meet Nickey. She used to be a masseuse for several years at a festival. And how did you even get that gig? How did that start?
So actually, I did it for 26 years.
Wow.
And I had a professional bodyworking practice. I'm also a psychologist. And it just so happens that a key person came into my practice, having been on tour with a very well-known band.
Okay.
He was a little run down, basically, from touring in Europe. And somehow he found his way to my office in a holistic medical group. And I did some body work with him, massage and energy work, craniosacral work. And he really loved it and asked me to start working with his performers.
Right.
So I did that for 26 years.
Yeah.
Made my own little green room.
And I have to tell you, so the way it would work is from the musician point of view, we would show up. And the first thing we would do when we got to the festival, and a lot of musicians know this, including Switchfoot and POD, the first thing you do is sign up for Nickey. Because the slots go fast.
It was an honor and a pleasure. Some musicians would actually put it into their contract and say, "Well, we'll come. We'll come if we can have some work backstage." Because obviously, you folks fly around the world, and when you're on tour, it's go go go, and it's really hard on the body. And one of the things that I've observed too is that you're very conscious about taking care of your body and being physically fit. So for me, it was a pleasure. I felt like I was working with some of the fittest people on the planet. Really, it was really fun because it was in 26 years. It would be like a reunion. I would. Well, even now I've met your children and your family. I feel like a part of that family in some small way. I had my own green room space and felt responsible to create an environment that was not loud and not upfront, but really more meditative and internal and peaceful, so that all the performers would have a little moment of just quiet. And then they'd go out and just go for it, rock it. Absolutely.
And I have a funny story. Well, you reminded me. The other thing is you educated us on bodywork, because for me, I was new to it. And the only other massages I'd ever had were, my mom has a friend who's basically like a curandera, like a Spanish healer. And she would use, some crystals and different things. And as a little kid, it always kind of made me uncomfortable because I didn't feel like I had a say, and I didn't feel like it mattered. Like I didn't want that. I just wanted massage. So the first time Nickey starts in on me, she's doing like, I don't even know.
And we have to say, this goes back to like the early 1990s, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was probably 97, 98.
Yeah.
I was probably early 20s. Early 20s. So she starts in and I'm like, what did I say to you? I was like, are yours the hands of the devil?
She did. She did. And I actually should say too, that I was the first person to be asked to set up a bodyworking space in Christian music festivals.
Absolutely. So a lot of us had no idea about.
That was the problem. Or the opportunity, I should say. The challenge was to educate people. And at that time, I was also teaching in a massage school in the Boston area. Right. And part of what we had to always do was re-educate. If we had students, we had to teach them how to go town by town to advocate, to become, to change the laws, because a lot of the laws would call the practices massage parlors for various dark reasons. There was a perception that any massage was dirty massage. I came at it from a very medical point of view. I was working in a group with physicians. I thought they wanted me for my psychology degree and the work that I do therapeutically in psychology. But no, they really knew about my work as a body worker and asked me to do that. And in that particular town, the law was fine. But I actually had some students in my massage practice who were working with key city officials who would come into their home and and have massages basically illegally in their own town.
No, thanks.
And so then those people had to advocate to make it legal.
Change it.
So we had to change the language too, to perceive what we were doing and call it massage therapy, call it therapeutic modalities, hands-on, body work.
Yeah.
Just create a whole new language that people would understand a little better.
Yeah.
And at that time in the 90s, holistic medicine was kind of in the dark, and there were a lot of people working, particularly Boston and in the Colorado area. Boulder, Colorado is one of the very best schools, which I've studied here for about 5 years, in terms of really changing medicine. And now it's pretty much merged into a more,
absolutely.
There's not traditional and holistic medicine anymore. It's sort of merged.
It's getting that way.
It's getting there. There's a lot of work to do.
And you did something that I really appreciate, and I didn't know this at the time because we didn't always play that festival, but you mentioned that you used somebody, or not used somebody, but you partnered with somebody.
I did, Dale Kuhn.
Yeah. What did you end up doing to educate people? That's pretty fascinating.
It really was. It was a moment in history, basically, in terms of education. Not only did I work with musicians, but this particular music festival had a lot of educational
academic
workshops.
side,
Sure. And so there was a key person from St. Anselm's in New Hampshire, Dale Kuhn, who does a lot politically, and I had done a pretty good amount of work with him over a few years. So maybe like later 1990s or early 2000s, we were asked to do a presentation because a lot of people still didn't know what bodywork was,
especially at a Christian festival.
Yes, exactly.
And in that world, and still, I would say, it's, like I said, is it new agey? What is she doing? What am I allowing her access into? So what did you guys end up doing? So
it's absolutely true that I think we all have at times our own perception of things challenged.
Sure.
And a lot of the musicians were coming and then needed a bit of an education, but even more so, the general public.
Right.
Really. Right. And I taught in a massage school for 7 years and also had a holistic practice. And also I had part of the week, I had a very conservative community mental health job in a depressed part of North Shore of Boston. So I really got a variety of experiences as a therapist about people's perception of how to take care of themselves, basically. Right. I mean, there are many ways to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
But this to me was groundbreaking, and especially teaching people and helping people develop a practice. I had a really busy bodywork practice. I probably worked with about 20 to 25 people a week.
Yeah,
in extended sessions. And then 2-3 days a week, I was doing verbal therapy, kind of more traditional therapy in community mental health. So it changed my life.
So what did you do for this with this gentleman? Like you guys did
for sure. So Dale really loved the body work. And at that time I had been intensely studying craniosacral therapy.
Which you'll tell us in a minute what that is in depth.
I will do. But so basically we were asked to do a presentation, a live presentation, which I was familiar doing
at the festival?
In massage schools. But we did it in the festival. Basically, I think it was in a converted bar.
That sounds about right.
Which we did pipes and drapes and make it all like an educational center. So that was really funny. Usually we try to pick really clear places that are not distracting,
not too close to the stage,
exactly.
To the main stage.
Yeah. So that it's got an energy that's very peaceful. This was fine, and we had about 50 people there, and people who did not know what bodywork was.
Wait, he really got on the table, and you really gave him bodywork?
He really did, yeah. And I was familiar as a teacher with doing the body work and teaching it at the same time.
Yes. Okay.
So it was like a tutoring session.
Right.
And then Dale had the opportunity to give his feedback about
Right.
what I was doing step by step, why I was doing it. And whenever I do a demonstration or an educational workshop like that, I use medical language.
Yeah.
Because it's the bridge, and it fits. Yeah. Like a foot in a shoe. You know, it makes a whole lot more sense to people when you begin talking about, for example, sympathetic nervous system, which is kind of the go.
It's just what we have.
It's
just fact.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that we discover, and especially in this workshop at the festival, is a lot of people have assumptions. They also don't know a lot about the bodies that they live in. They are dissociated really from understanding how a body works.
Yes.
Frankly, I feel like we should start educating kids the minute they're in school about taking care of their bodies and how to touch people appropriately. And I would have to say that at the Christian festivals, the people that were not so informed were intimidated by the idea of touch therapy.
Yes, absolutely.
It's okay to talk. You can intervene as much with words as you can with hands-on, but words somehow are perceived as being safer.
Absolutely.
Sometimes than hands-on.
Yes.
However, we are a starved for touch culture.
Very, very true.
And really, if you want to think about the Bible and Christianity, Jesus laid on hands. He was the first healing therapist in the Christian tradition. He really made it. Made it normalized. Right. You know.
And and for a man to do that, it wasn't just it wasn't a woman's thing only for touch. In our society, we think of women touching, but for men to touch, and grown men.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, I would never pretend to have the powers.
Oh, sure.
That Jesus did.
Sure.
But think about the stories about how he touched and people would be healed from things. What I will say, that working in medicine and coordinating with doctors who had hospital privileges, who were fully endorsed by the AMA, who also knew holistic medicine, I really had the opportunity to see people turn their life around.
Absolutely.
And turn their medical emergencies into emerging into a whole new piece. And at the time that when we're referring to where Dale and I did that presentation, there was also a huge movement. Not just it started in the Boston area and Boulder, Colorado. Right. There's a lot of folks who were saying, well, you can integrate verbal therapy with body therapy modalities. And so we started becoming very strong in that integration.
And that's kind of how I met you, because one thing you were doing that was new to me, and you talk about touch, was, so we would lay there on the table. This is from my point of view.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear it.
Okay. Yeah. And you have your fingers in my neck, and I'm laying down. And I'm thinking for a long time without any massage. And I'm thinking, well, what is she? Is she praying? Is she asking God to show her where to touch and where I'm sore? Is she connecting with me? Is she trying to say something to me? Like, I didn't know. And then you started using language of cranial sacral. And you started, because through the years I got to know you and I became friends with you. Like, we would meet up in the hot tub and chat. And I'd bring her chocolate because she was always barefoot massaging and liked chocolate. A little hippie, a little fun.
It pays to treat your therapist very well.
I learned that. So anyway, you started talking about cranial sacral, and you used to come to Boulder, and sometimes we'd get together. Can you talk to us about what that even was? What were you doing? What is
Sure. It? So I would ask you further.
Sure.
Okay. So initially you felt my fingers around your, what we call the occipital ridge, which is where things begin to go. So how'd that feel?
Amazing. It felt in the first probably 5-10 minutes, it felt uncomfortable. Not sure, because I didn't know you well.
You didn't know what I was doing.
I didn't know what you were doing. Yeah. But then when you do sink into it, I felt like it was a dance. Like I was showing you and you were showing me together. I would relax my fingers I would relax my head into your fingers, and you would turn my head in small movements that I didn't quite understand, but I felt like I knew it had a connection to my whole body.
Yes.
But I didn't understand it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And once I learned through the years to get more peaceful with it, right when I jumped on that table and I knew you, I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. So I would almost say emotionally ready to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're emotionally ready for a massage, you're like, oh my gosh, touch my neck. I'm so sore. And you're like kind of pushing your neck towards the masseuse, like, come on. But now knowing you more, it's like, all right, we're going to do this dance and we're going to start with that and we're going to find out where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love it, but I don't quite understand it.
Sure. So the reason I asked you is that a big part of craniosacral therapy is, actually any body working touch modality is negotiation and also presence. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so each person is like a fingerprint, is unique. And so I have been taught by all my mentors, and I have learned by my own work, that it's really important to enter very respectfully into someone's whole body, mind, spirit space, if you will. And that I actually have had experiences of receiving really bad craniosacral therapy.
Really?
Where I needed to actually receive healing from that, receive medical intervention.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Because the clinician was not paying attention.
Just zoned out.
Yeah. And so, and wasn't at a skill level. They were practicing. And that's okay. I would never name names or whatever, but it was probably the most important lesson I had, along with really good practices in how to do craniosacral therapy.
Right.
But, just experiencing that, wow, it's so important to be really gentle in this very fast moving culture that we live in. People are moving very quickly and oftentimes not even attending to each other.
Especially musicians.
Being present. Yes. And yet, when you think about musicians in particular, you're talking about people who are songwriters, who are musical writers, who are working in a team, who are integrating with even production managers or people who do lights or people who do,
performers too.
Truly. And so it's a whole community that you're kind of walking into. And so I was studying in Boulder for about 5 years, this advanced craniosacral.
What is it?
So it is, your cranium is your head, to be really simplistic.
Sure.
Your sacral bone is the base of your spine.
Okay.
And there's a whole connecting, anatomy that connects from your head into your sacral bone through your spine.
Okay.
And the understanding in this particular medicine is that it is your core self. Oh. So, and from that, all of your nervous system kind of branches out like branches of a tree.
Right.
All of your vascular system, your muscular system, everything is integrated. And I could go on.
Sure.
It all is one thing. And the other really interesting thing about the cranium and the sacral bone is that it also connects to organs that are integrated with each other. So we talk about the brain being part of the cranium. So a pretty important thing.
Sure.
And people don't realize that actually the gut is a bigger brain than the head.
See, mind blown.
The cranium.
When I hang out with her every time. Okay, say that again. The gut is a bigger brain.
It's a more sensing brain. It's a more intuitive brain than the cranium.
Yes.
And we tend to be analytic thinkers in this culture, especially with technology. We've been sort of brainwashed a little bit.
Sure.
We just use that word.
Sure.
And we don't listen to our gut enough.
That's what I was thinking. The minute you said that, I was like, I'm such a gut person, which gets me in a lot of trouble in our society.
It's very good. I'm a gut person too.
Maybe that's why we love each other so much.
Absolutely. You just have to learn to
listen to your gut.
To integrate it. And that system where the gut informs the brain and the brain, the gut, and back and forth, they're like family members.
Would you almost say mind and spirit there?
No, I would just say it's just an informing.
Okay.
It's sort of like the IT communication center, if you will, for all aspects. So it's mind, body, spirit, emotions, thinking, feeling, it's having. So that is called your enteric nervous system. And it is a holistic system.
Mm-hmm.
However, a good majority of people override their guts.
And that's what you're doing when you're doing the finger work? What are you doing?
Yeah,
there?
it's really,
I'm trying, sorry, it's so simplistic.
That's
the way
okay.
I say it.
It's, the finger work.
I know.
Is focused specifically in holding gently in a place called the occipital ridge, which is that if you were to, and everybody can if you're listening, kind of follow your neck bones up until there's a ridge, and that would connect to your skull.
Mm-hmm.
And in that location, if you can self-massage, you can do your own cranial work
mm-hmm.
by just simply massaging where that ridge is with clear intention, with focused intention. If you massage it and kind of are distracted and are watching horrible media,
sure,
it's not going to happen the same way.
Yeah.
But that's where we begin.
Mm.
And quite frankly, even if I'm doing massage, a lot of massage therapists just start face down.
Right.
And I do not. I start with cranial work because the system is less defended. It opens a whole up easier when you begin at the cranium. Basically, that stillness is what you're looking for.
Right. And it gets you, from my point of view, it gets you there.
Yes, it does.
Gets you ready to receive.
Yeah. It's just a place of equilibrium. You hit equilibrium.
Right.
It's a place of stillness from which all of our body, mind, spirit emerges.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
that,
awesome.
I know that's abstract. It's an abstract statement,
sure.
But there's a lot of, I could talk medical, like into
you could, but everybody does.
But the thing that's profound is the tradition that I studied of craniosacral therapy is really informed by a man named Dr. Franklin Sills.
And you went to Europe, right?
I went I studied here in Boulder, Colorado with Franklin. And then after that, I spent about 6 years going over to Cornwall to a place called Karuna Institute, which is his home teaching location.
Wow.
In retreat for 5 days. And so what we do on the table for, let's say, an hour is a little glimpse of what it's like to do it for 5 days.
I can't imagine.
In retreat.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's what was interesting to me too when I met Nickey is we would hang out and I learned about her and I even got to visit her home. That was the thing. She had beautiful gardens in her home and I got to learn that she was more of, all the things, horticulturalist, doing mind work, doing body work, and then environmental work.
Yes. Well, honestly, you knew me first as a therapist.
True.
I started out at the age of 17 in doing floral design.
Floral design.
Yes,
okay.
I did.
That makes sense about your Vermont home.
And I've always worked professionally. So that is sort of the place that I heal is around plants. And from high school, I kept doing floral design. I had great mentors and became actually an expert in weddings.
Oh yeah, of course.
I was the wedding girl.
Yeah.
And I've worked in my lifespan in about 10 different flower shops in different locations. It's a great career if you move around because you can kind of always do it in different places.
It's probably beautiful and life-giving.
It's so amazing. It really is. I'm still asked to do floral designs for weddings or special events. I have my own mentor who does private silent retreats. Oh. And he's a very special Christian Catholic, by tradition, a Carmelite monk.
Yeah.
He is now an associate because he married someone. He left to marry someone, fell in love, and that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
In my view. Anyway, I do for the silent retreats, the altars and different locations. And it's a real joy for me. But the longer story is I decided at 17 that was what I was going to study, even though I probably could have been an accountant or there's a lot of things I could have done.
Sure.
And I was skilled to do.
Study botany?
Yeah. So I studied actually horticulture, got my first degree in horticulture, started working in nonprofit educational centers or private facilities, worked for the National Park Service for a while, Arboretum, historic gardens, and then eventually finished a 2-year degree, went on to a 4-year degree in horticultural therapy and environmental education.
Horticultural therapy?
Yes.
I've not heard of this. This is new. No, this is new. We've talked about a lot of things. What is horticultural therapy? No.
Okay, so we're in the time frame. I graduated from high school in 1975.
Okay.
So we're way back.
Almost, I was born the next year.
So we're way back.
Sure.
And I think in the frame of reference, this modern culture we live in, people just assume that women can do anything, men can do anything,
sure.
that we sort of can trade places and do things. When I was in high school and then envisioned working in horticulture and design, there were very limited things at times that you could do. Like women were never doctors. Men were never nurses, for example.
Right.
And we can go on and on and on.
Sure.
And it seems silly because I don't even think that way anymore.
Right.
But really at the time where I was choosing what I was there to do, the world was pretty conservative in some ways. There were hippies, if you will, and there was this whole Woodstock movement from the 60s into the 70s. And that consciousness was sort of still interfacing with conservative consciousness, if you will, and perceptions. So part of what I was geared to was, how can I do what my heart thinks is right to do in a culture that hadn't really woken completely up? And so
you're even from the East Coast, so that's shocking.
So I did the 2-year degree in horticulture. I did find out about horticultural therapy, which was fascinating. And it was a practice in, say, senior centers or psychiatric facilities, particularly. And what they started finding out is that when people touch the earth, and this is a revolutionary idea, believe me.
Oh, this is not bringing flowers in. This is touching the earth.
This is bringing flowers. Well, it is whatever form of touching the earth you're doing.
Okay.
So gardening, maybe you have greenhouses, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
But it's basically that man connected to nature situation.
Yeah.
And so when I finished my associate's degree at Temple University in Ambler, Pennsylvania, it's a branch campus. They have amazing programs now still, if anybody out there is interested. So I went on to University of Vermont, and I went there specifically because they were the revolutionary school in the country that had an environmental program that, regardless of what you were studying, you could do a coordinate major in environmental studies.
That's amazing.
So I had a friend that was in economics, if you will.
Sure.
Very he was very rooted in traditional conservative. I think his father owned a huge bank or something. But he was studying environmental ed, so he got a coordinate major.
That's cool.
And basically integrated like economics with environmentalism. Right. And we know now that to be, which wasn't really much in the 70s, conscious investing, for example.
Yes,
that sort of
absolutely.
thing. So I had already enough experience in horticulture to get a bachelor's degree from University of Vermont in horticulture. I sort of then designed my own major around education and environmentalism. Right. Because at this time, I started realizing that I started knowing a lot of things from the educational part of environmental studies. A lot of people were not informed about global warming, about the environmental destruction, pollution, on and on we go.
So you were part of that crew that kind of educated me in the 80s. Because I did get environmental studies in 5th grade, and that's probably because of work that people were doing your age, starting to, I guess you just stir up the conversation. And then eventually when it gets to my generation, we're having the conversation.
That's right. Well, it started, look at our culture now. Look at the global warming now. We're really not there yet.
Well, yeah.
We're really not. But it was a very exciting time because things were getting really stirred up. And the conservative folks were not really thinking in this terms. So I did work. UVM had in natural areas, so I cut trails and made benches and kind of monitored the natural areas.
Right.
They had 7. They still have 7 of them. they're amazing.
7 natural areas in Vermont.
Yeah. So I did that as my work study. I worked in a flower shop.
Yeah, of course.
and I designed my own individualized learning. I approached Vermont State Hospital. At that time in the 70s, people were still being institutionalized with psychiatric illness.
Right.
And it was a time where they started rolling people out of the institutions. That was a breakthrough. Now we live with people in community, and they're treated a little bit differently. Some say that's good. Some say it's not so good because we've sort of opened the doors, and folks need sometimes structure.
Support.
But at that time, I went down there, and they had greenhouses.
That's awesome.
They had a little bit of a horticultural therapy program.
Sure.
For example, there's all kinds of practices. For example, if someone was really exhibiting anger or agitation, we would have them break up clay pots. And pound them. And then there's a purpose for that. So then you take the clay that's broken up and put it at the base of a pot to make drainage for the plant. So that's just an example, but the pride that people get from gardening. And at that point in time, now there's so many more programs for kids in schools, but a lot of kids didn't know where bananas or oranges came from in the grocery store. You know,
there was a little boy recently found out corn is real.
It's still
corn.
If you're not integrated into really hands-on, then you don't know. In fact, there's a whole psychological branch off. It's called nature deficit disorder.
Oh, wow.
And there's books on it and studies on it. All that kind of
Which
stuff.
is kind of why I did this podcast, to Pump to Be a Hippie, is the idea of me just having a garden in the backyard. I mean, that's part of me educating myself and my kids